Um, all right, welcome to the Transfer Talks podcast. It's your co-host Ashmit, with co-host Neil. We have a super special guest today, Jeannie, who's a transfer student from University of Washington to Stanford University, transferring to the probably the top one or two universities. So congratulations to you, and we'll be hearing on your story today. So Neil, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, for sure. We just love to start these off by letting the guest, speak on their experiences, like in their own words. So, like from your perspective, just walk us through like how you basically got to where you were today.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of different people supporting me along the way. And I think I decided to transfer this January. So it's been a quick series of changes, but I grew up in San Jose, and then I went to the University of Washington, and then I stayed there for around 2 years, and then I decided to transfer to Stanford. And it definitely wasn't an easy decision, I would say, just because I was surrounded by so many people who are so supportive. But I think being at Stanford, I'm really thankful every day on where I am. And yeah, I think part of me wanting to be on this talk was also to kind of give advice or share experiences or share, I guess, kind of to see that I see you wherever you are in the transfer process, just because I feel like I didn't have as much resources when I was transferring. And so I hope I can give some sort of insight, if not insight, maybe just to say that I was in the exact same position that you were and that the process is difficult, but I think if you take the initiative to reach out and really put yourself out there, I think you never know what's going to happen. And I think that's really exciting and hopeful.
Yeah, for sure. I think 100% it is like there's not a lot of resources, and especially like as a California student, there's not a lot of I see a lot of resources from to like a trans for like transferring to like a school like UCSB, UCLA, Berkeley. But then when it comes to kind of like if you have your sights set on maybe like an Ivy League or like a school above, that's kind of where it kind of falls off. So 100%, I think there needs to be like more kind of help in that aspect. But that was going to lead me to my first question. In terms of like your stats, like before when you came in, when you sent them to Stanford, did you like submit SATs? What was your like GPA? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think I'm going to preface this by saying that I didn't have a high school transcript. I had a GED score, which is like instead of graduating high school, you take in place of that diploma. And so I had a GED score. I don't exactly remember my scores for that, but I do remember that I had a 35 on the ACT, which is, I believe, out of 36. And then I had a 4.0 at university. And I think those were honestly my only scores that I submitted. In hindsight, I think my GED scores could have been higher. And if they're in that position of like, oh, I wish my high school GPA was higher or whatever, like I wish my GED was higher, I think personally for me, the college GPA mattered a lot more because I think ultimately the ACT and SAT are kind of to demonstrate how well you're going to do in a college environment. And so if you're maybe still in your first or second year of college, then I would say the best thing you could do right now is working on your college GPA. And I think that's something that really helps me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I definitely stressed that. I had a pretty low high school GPA. My SAT was good, but like for the longest time, I felt like I was like kind of hindered by it. And I realized like what's done is done, like you can't go back and change the past. You can only focus on the future. So that's kind of like been my mindset going into that. Um, but as you know, like the transfer process isn't only grades. Writing ECs are also a part of it. So talk to me kind of like about like your extra how you kind of like portrayed your ECs because I know like a lot of people like to talk about like spikes, stuff like that. So was there any kind of like direction you kind of took your application?
Yeah, I think a lot of my extracurriculars was honestly volunteering in the community and taking full advantage of everything that was offered to me. And so for context, I applied as a or I applied intending to major in public policy, and that's what I'm doing right now. And I think a lot of my extracurriculars were focused on that in the sense that I was doing public policy research at the University of Washington. And then I was running, I volunteered for different campaigns and um, everything from like very local school board campaigns to congressional campaigns. And I think something that stood out was the fact that a lot of these, like there was a very clear reason why I was doing a lot of these. I think they together rate a great story of how one, don't I think a lot of people have the pressure to take on like big leadership positions, but I think for me in my case, I started a lot with just like or knocking or just like super volunteer positions. And so I think it showed my dedication. And then secondly, I complemented a lot of that grassroots on the ground work with research, which I think gave me a lot of analytical skills. And I think that's kind of how I crafted my story. So I did two research positions. One was on public policy, and then the other one was on human rights research. And so altogether, I think all of my research and extracurriculars were related. I will say I also included things on my application that were like non-merit based at all, like doing yoga or like running or something that showed that I like to also do all of these other hobbies. And I think I also talked about playing the flute in one of my Stanford essays. And so I think if it doesn't really matter if you have a leadership position or what title you have. I think it really matters in your essay that you explain kind of like what led you to those positions and also I guess like your motivation behind it. Because I think in my case, the extracurricular activities really helped me to discover that I wanted to study public policy. And so I think in that way it worked out really well. But I guess whatever you're doing and whatever you're taking advantage of, I think they want to see that you're taking advantage of things that are already offered to you. And then also like you're being involved in ways that you think are meaningful.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like I liked when you talked about like kind of like talking about like putting things like the flute or like yoga as an EC. I think being genuine to who you are is like a trend I see in all successful applicants to like these top schools, you know. Like I feel like there's a lot of stat padding in the Bay Area. You know, everyone wants to say like, oh, co-founder, founder, all that stuff. But I think like, you know, just being true to yourself and showing like your genuine personality probably do you a lot better than, you know, putting like these kind of like fake titles or something like that.
Mhm,
But yeah, so another aspect to the process would be like, you know, letters of rec.
mhm.
I think Stanford, they require two, if I'm not mistaken, two academic. So kind of like how did you kind of go about, you know, building these relationships with your like professors, and like, you know, going to like ask them about the letters of rec?
Yeah, I think this is gonna differ based on what school you're currently going to, just because the school that I was originally enrolled at had really, really large class sizes. Like some of them were like 300 people, some of them were 400, and even the smaller classes were around like 150 people. So I think it's really a matter of, I think I guess what I want to say is like whether or not you're transferring, it's still really important to make those connections with professors. I think a really easy way is just going to professors and introducing yourself. And I think for me, I attended a lot of office hours, and the professors that wrote me my letter of recommendation, I took multiple classes with them so that they could see me in different class dynamics and things like that. I think for one of my papers, I got a like approval for this in advance. But I actually had one of my grad school, I believe she was a PhD candidate writing my letter for me, just because I felt like she could better speak on my abilities or participation in class because we have smaller sections of like 20 people, and I felt like that might be more representative of how I am. But yeah, definitely I would say build those connections early on. I think it might be even a plus if you did research with that professor, just because I think it gives you more perspective beyond just how you do in classes.
Hmm.
I think I submitted one optional letter of recommendation, which was from a candidate that I worked for one of the political campaigns.
Hmm.
I think that provided a great perspective in terms of not only like what do I do when I'm not directly assigned assignments, just because a lot of the campaigns that I worked on were grassroots, and so a lot of it was taking initiative. And so I think if you are in a similar position as me, where like you're in a really large class structure and you're having difficulty establishing those connections, I would say it's okay to ask a PhD candidate if that's acceptable with whatever school you're applying to. And then also like to also build connections in your volunteer or ECs, just to use, that's not going to replace your entire letter of recommendation, but to kind of supplement your characteristics or your motivations or anything like that.
Yeah, 100%. Like for me and Ushman, we go to community college, so we have a really small class size, and I think that's kind of been a blessing for us. I was able to like build a really great relationship with my econ teacher, and I also like you can correct me if I'm wrong. Like I feel like in high school, I always tried to like get a letter of rec from a professor that was like in the field I wanted to major in, and I kind of realized like it would be better to like pick the professors that know you like best. Like I have a really good relationship with my English teacher, and I think like she was able to write me a really great letter of rec. So yeah, 100%. Pick like people who know you the best. Um, so then
Definitely.
like now, yeah, what was that?
Oh no, I was just definitely going to agree with that. Like you can have like the president of the entire country write a letter of recommendation for you, and that's going to be amazing if you know them like super super well and you have worked closely with them. But I'm gonna say that like having like someone who oversaw your volunteer initiatives or like just your English teacher or your econ professor, I feel like those connections are just as valuable. Uh,
Mhm.
and so yeah, I would 100% agree with you.
Yeah, definitely. Relationship first. So I had a question like now like you're from a 4 year, so the question might be like a little different. But traditionally, from what I've seen from like CC students and some like 4 year transfers, right? Um, like especially in California, if you maintain like a 4.0 GPA in community college, you have some extracurricular work, you work on your application like a decent amount of time. You have a chance of like landing like a Berkeley or UCLA, just because of the pathway to from CC community college to like UC schools is so great. But like as I mentioned before, like when it comes to then applying to these like higher level schools, there's like a large like steep drop off. You look at like Columbia, who's only accepted like 100, or like Yale, who only accepts like 50, Stanford only 50. And like even coming from you, right? Like Stanford really only likes like California community colleges. Like if you're looking at like the transfers, most of them are from CCs, versus like 4 years, which makes it even more harder. So like in your opinion, like what do you think like differentiates a good application from a great application? Or like how would you kind of like set yourself up to kind of like be differentiate in that sense?
Um, yeah, I definitely agree with you in the sense that these schools are really competitive and it's sometimes difficult to know like what you should be highlighting, what you should be talking about. Um, on my personal stories on like specifically what makes my academic experiences unique. And also, I think as a side note, when my friends at former university or student or friends who are at community colleges ask for advice, sometimes they're like, "Why do you want to transfer essays look like an introductory essay to Stanford?" I would say I really focused on not I think admission officers are already at Stanford, so they know Stanford really well. So I think I kind of avoided writing things that I could easily find on the website. I think I specifically tried to say, like, these are the things that I can bring to Stanford, and these are the things that I can benefit from Stanford to have this impact on my community or to have this impact on the people around me. And also, I think something that made a big difference for me was my unconventional academic journey. Just because, as I previously mentioned, I don't have a high school transcript and I have a GED. So my story is kind of unique in the sense that I actually went to the University of Washington right after eighth grade. So I kind of had this leap in my academic journey. And so I kind of tried to explain that in my paper and kind of what that showed, or the characters that it showed about me. And that's to say that you don't have to have this crazy unique story, but I think being at wherever you are actually truly makes you so unique. And I think for me, just emphasizing how that experience kind of shapes the way I see my opportunities and see and the ways that I approach things really made a difference. Um, and I think this really goes back to the previous conversation about trying to be genuine in your papers. I think my entire folk paper, if I were summarized into one word, would be like why, because I wrote a lot about like why I did this or why I want to transfer or like why this certain pathway led me to this certain result or why this is my future goal. And so I think focusing on those really made a big difference in my papers. And yeah, I think being at community college, being at a four-year university, I don't think you're inherently more or less disadvantaged than other people. I think that's kind of part of what makes you unique. And so I wouldn't say you should try to cover that up or try not to talk about that. If it's really relevant to your story, then I would actually go towards talking about it. Yeah, I think that I think a lot of different factors go into it. Certainly a lot of luck, but also you as a person is really who they want to be talking to.
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree. I think it's really important to be genuine when it comes to like your application. I think too many people fall in this like rabbit hole of like coming up with ECs that they think the AL will like, but if you just do like what you're actually passionate about, I think that will like actually yield you way better results. But like one question I have is if like you can go back and kind of give yourself like some advice, like what would it be?
Um, I think for me, I started my transfer essays pretty late. Sorry, that's my clock. Pretty late in the process. I think I started around January or like really late December. And so maybe starting a little bit earlier on. Sorry, I don't know how much of that is getting caught. Here, can I stop and then I'll
No
resume
worries, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries.
and
Go for
y'all
it.
edit it out?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, sorry about that. I think if I were to go back, perhaps starting a little bit earlier on my papers might have helped. Um, but I think aside from that, ultimately, I don't have really big like regrets or anything I would have done differently. Um, Even if the results were different, even if I didn't get accepted to any of the schools I applied to, I think the transfer journey itself, um, kind of just writing those personal essays really helps you reflect on your like future goals. And I think it really helps you discover who you are as a person. And so I don't think I have big regrets. Perhaps starting a little bit earlier, because I think the main reason I started a little bit late was because like I was thinking through like, is this really worth it if it's only like 50 people are accepted? Or like if I don't really get accepted, is it really gonna be worth it in the end? But I think that only delayed me getting started because I ultimately knew that I really wanted to put in an application. And so yeah, I think that's my only regret. But looking back, I don't think I have many regrets in the process. Yeah.
Yeah, you and me both. I think like I also was like about to like I told myself, in November, like, Neil, you just finished UC's November 30th. You're all done. You gotta just keep the same energy. And then bro, like December break happened and I was like, all right, you know what, I'm gonna chill. But now I'm back on and yeah, I think it's still definitely possible. Like it's not a hindrance. It's just like I think starting early definitely you can exceed it. But I do have like you see like essays that I can like use as well. I can translate over pretty well, so I'm not too worried.
No,
Mm,
that's
yeah.
amazing. And definitely the chill time is definitely important as well.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, so like going into like the application season, was Stanford the only school you applied to, or you also like kind of applied to other schools as well?
Originally I had a pretty long list of schools I was gonna apply to. I think it was like 5 or 6 schools. But I think ultimately, part of it was because I was really blessed to be at a four-year university. And so I picked those schools that I was really, really wanting to go to instead of just because the school is higher ranked on some online list, I'm going to apply. I think I changed my approach to if I weren't at the University of Washington, would I really, really want to go? And so that's kind of the approach that I took. And so I think I ultimately applied to 2 or 3 schools. I remember applying to Stanford and I believe Princeton. And yeah, the approach that I kind of took is if I were to be accepted at this school, would I really want to be going? And I was also in the position of graduating a year and a half early. And so by transferring, I actually would be giving up a lot of like college credits and also be staying a year and a half longer. So ultimately I decided, rather than applying to every single school that I can in this time frame, I kind of stuck to those schools that I really wanted to go to. And I think this is kind of like your judgment call. If you feel like you want to apply to more schools, that's definitely great. And yeah, I think mm, looking back in hindsight, applying to two schools might have been better for me just because I had a lot of time to stew over those two papers and kind of look back on them. But yeah, I think that was kind of my process. And I think at the time I was also very busy with a lot of ECs and classes. It's classes for a handful. And so yeah, I think a lot of different reasons went into that. But I ultimately ended up applying to, I believe, 2 or 3.
Yeah. I was planning to also apply to like Michigan, like U Chicago,
Mhm.
I think like Cornell as well. But then, I kind of like took a step back and I was like, these schools like really like do I really want to go to these schools? Like would I pick like a UCLA because over these schools? And most of them, like I said yes. So I kind of just cut it down, focus more on quality and stuff like that. So that kind of led me to my next question. Like you talked about essays a little bit, but like in the beginning, when you first get these questions, I think like a struggle with me and Ashmit are like it's like maybe like 90%, like 75% of like the time, like writing the essays, just actually like thinking about what to write. I think after that, it's pretty smooth and stuff. But like for you, right? Like when you got these like the Stanford like 50 word like questions or like these small like 200 word like like PIQ type of questions, how'd you kind of like go about like thinking about like a response?
Yeah, I will say the 50-word essays for Stanford were a little bit overwhelming for me in the beginning because it was like describe a significant issue to you in 50 words, or if you could go back to a moment or like a moment in history or something like that, like in 50 words, or um, things that matter to you in 50 words. And so I think the way I approached it is that each of these things are a way to tell something different about myself. And so I think I went in with like a list of things that I wanted to talk about. For example, I really wanted to talk about my campaign work. I wanted to talk about my unconventional educational journey. I wanted to talk about like different factors on my resume or different ECs. And I think I kind of divvied up that list into different essays. And so none of my essays were like repetitive in what they said. They kind of all talked about different things. Like you can think about it if like one essay kind of highlights your passion for volunteering, then maybe another essay can talk about like your passion for research. Or I think I approach those in a way that like, how can I highlight different aspects of myself in a way that isn't repetitive and in a way that kind of gives them like a new nugget of knowledge about myself. And so I think another thing that really helped was in the beginning, I really wanted to write these like perfect letters of rec or letters or perfect papers or like prompts. And so I stewed over it for such a long time. And ultimately, I think I came to like the first draft isn't ultimately what I'm going to submit. And so I just wrote like a bunch of different versions of those papers, um like my 50-word essays, like what's an important issue that matters to you. I just literally wrote down every single issue that matters to me and then kind of narrowed it down from there. And so I think one would be like removing the pressure of making, especially your first draft, amazing, because I don't think anybody will submit their first draft anyways. And then a second thing would be like focus on highlighting different aspects of yourself throughout the essays.
Yeah, I think like machine gun firing, like I think the best thing that I learned like when I was doing UCs was like writing, like your first draft definitely doesn't matter, but like I think understanding that you're never gonna have like that perfect like the perfect like essay like doesn't exist. You can only like get really close to it. So and that comes with like repetition, rewriting, cutting, rewriting, all that stuff. So the more time you can like go there, like the closer you'll get to getting the like an essay. I really good.
Yeah, yeah. I'm actually curious, like, how's the social life at Stanford?
Yeah, the social life, I think they do a really great job, in my opinion, of like putting the transfers together in one dorm. Because like my roommates transfer, the people who live across from me are transferred, the people who live beside me are transfers, above me are transfers. And so I think they do a really great job of kind of helping you build community. Because I think that was one of the big things that I was worried about. All of the frosh, like they're gonna be in their own frosh dorms, all of like the juniors and seniors are going to have this like friend group. And I think they do a really great job of having like transfer networking days and different events for transfers to attend. Um, I think also beyond the transfer community, people are just generally super welcoming here. And it's really easy to form study groups. I'm not sure if it's because like the class, I'm sure it's because part of it is because the class is smaller, but I think the other part of it is that people are generally like excited to get to know you. And I think a common sentiment at Stanford is that they're not going to be like critiquing like where you come from. I think a lot of people actually want to hear about your stories, regardless of if that's from a four-year university. A lot of my colleagues are from like military veteran backgrounds. And so I think more than anything, people are really excited to get to know you. And I think they also have a transfer class in fall quarter that meets at a regular time. And so you get to kind of know people more. Um, I mean, part of it is also how much you put yourself out there. Like, are you going to attend every single networking event, or are you going to attend those that kind of align with your interests? It's kind of up to you and how much you want to put into those relationships. But I think definitely the groundwork is there. And you are immediately surrounded by so many people. It's kind of amazing. And the other thing I will say is the University of Washington, we had really great communities, but not a lot of people. I think majority of people do live on campus, but there's also like 30 or 40% that don't. And I think that kind of differs from the Stanford environment, not saying one is better or worse, but Stanford requires, I believe, 1 year that you live on campus. And then also that I think the number is like something between like the high 80s to like low 90% of students live on campus anyways. And so I would say overall, it's a really friendly environment to get to know people.
Yeah. Yeah, and also Stanford, I feel like it's in a really great location. And
Yeah,
yeah, and like something like more than 90% of students live on campus. So I feel like everybody's just like kind of together. So I really like the aspect of like the social aspect of Stanford.
definitely.
Yeah. So I don't know. I have friends at UDUB and they like they kind of like tell me that they don't really like the social life. So I guess it's like up to different people and stuff. But now I remember you said planning to graduate in like 1.5 years early or something like that.
Mhm.
So now that you've transferred to Stanford, like a lot of people on this podcast, like the Stanford transfers, they all talk about like how, now they want to pursue like something new, like in addition to what they did. Like a lot of them did like poli sci. Now they want to like maybe do like economics or like maybe like a CS type of thing. So, like now coming to Stanford, how is like the culture there like influenced you? Do you think like you want to pick up like another minor or graduate like still earlier? Do you want to take more time and do something
Yeah,
else?
no, great question. I think I'm going to start off by saying like UW was such a warm and welcoming place for the 2 years I was there. I definitely met so many people and they kind of encouraged me and supported me, I think, along this journey. And I'm in contact with quite a few of them still. But I think in terms of what I might be doing differently here, or like maybe things I'm looking forward to, um, I'm definitely going to be staying a little longer than if I were to be at UW. But I'm also going to be exploring public policy. I originally was in political science and philosophy, as well as a major called legal systems, or law, society, and justice. And it really focused on like legal systems and social issues. But I've transferred to Stanford, where now I'm doing public policy, and a lot of the classes are econ related. And so I think that's going to be a bit of a change for me as someone who solely took like humanities and social science classes. I mean, econ is social science, but still both a quantitative and a qualitative approach to kind of what I was doing. And aside from that, so many different clubs to explore. I think I'm currently involved in the Cardinal Policy Group, and I found a really great research team on campus. And so that kind of makes the campus experience so much fun and a lot of things to look forward to, in addition to the Model UN team. And aside from that, my family also lives pretty close to Stanford. And so I come home during the weekends or maybe like 2 or 3 times a month, which is a bit of a change for me. And I really like being near family. And so I think that has been a positive change for me.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That sounds great. I think we're like running out of time right now, but Jeannie, thank you so much for being on this podcast and talking to us. There's definitely not a lot of information, like especially to like these top schools, and I think getting more people to come on, speak on their experiences, like help some of our viewers kind of navigate their own transfer process because this is like a continuing cycle, and yeah, I just think helping like other people is like something that's very important, especially for like transfers. So thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for hopping on. It was super insightful.
Yeah, no, thank you guys so much. It was a pleasure to be on here. And if you guys are watching this video, I hope you guys are the next guest on here. I'm looking forward to y'all's future videos. And yeah, have a great start to 2025.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Thank you so much.